After MAGA Republicans' baseless witch hunt against President Biden suffered recent back-to-back high-profile setbacks, even the straight news part of the Fox propaganda network is bending over backwards to try to prop the whole thing up. But unfortunately for them, they've hit a brick wall. Their own liberal commentator, Jessica Tarlov. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, this is the latest victory lap that I and other leftist/liberal progressive commentators, people who are aligned with Democrats, are taking because the impeachment inquiry, the baseless impeachment inquiry against President Biden, which has effectively been the main Republican project since they took the House majority in January 2023, is not doing well. It never really did well, right? But it's been one defeat after another. And I want to play a clip just to rehash, or rather remind you, of two very recent set of news regarding one of their key witnesses.
Yeah, Savannah, good morning. Alexander Smirnov appeared yesterday in a Las Vegas federal court to face charges over allegedly lying to the FBI, particularly about claiming that Joe Biden accepted bribes to benefit Hunter's businesses. Now, it's a claim that's central to the impeachment probe and one often repeated by Republicans. But the bombshell came when David Weiss, that same special counsel who has charged Hunter Biden, alleged that Smirnov lied and that he admitted to working with Russian intelligence officials involved in passing on a story about Hunter Biden.
All right, folks, so just so I'm clear about this. So all of this goes back to the conspiracy theory that MAGA Republicans have alleged about President Biden when he was vice president, when he was just civilian Joe Biden, and then again as president, and his son Hunter Biden. This idea that Joe Biden was sinisterly influencing U.S. foreign policy when he was Barack Obama's vice president to benefit his son's business dealings. The guy, Alexander Smirnov, who was arrested for making false statements to the FBI, played a central role in that conspiracy theory and the predicate for MAGA Republicans' impeachment efforts against the president. They would repeatedly cite the claims that this person made. Well, not only did the FBI bust him for making false statements in terms of those allegations, but it also turns out that they have evidence that he did so on behalf of Russian intelligence, that he was even recently regurgitating Russian intelligence. So you would think that that would be the absolute death knell of this entire situation, right? And that Republicans would hang their heads in shame and be excoriated and mocked and belittled, as they deserve, by all elements of the media. Well, fortunately for them, they have the Fox propaganda network and even the straight news part of the Fox propaganda network, not just Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters, but people like Harris Faulkner and Dana Perino, and I think his name is John Roberts. They're all bending over backwards to try to prop this thing up, to breathe life into it once more. I want to play this one clip of Harris Faulkner, and then we're going to tackle multiple clips in which Jessica Tarlov, basically, she steps outside the studio of the Five, and she sets the rest of the Fox propaganda network on proverbial fire, bringing her debate skills to bear. So this is a clip from Harris Faulkner.
Trial, and special counsel Weiss says that he's concerned that Smirnov was actually using Russian intelligence contacts to try to peddle lies about Joe Biden leading up to this year's presidential election. Harris?
Do they have evidence?
Well, the FBI is the one that has to answer the question, because the FBI, as I said, proved that they hired him and they kept him on for 10 years. They paid him over $100,000, six figures. We don't have the exact number, Harris, but he was a known informant, a trusted informant for so long. So that's where the question goes to the FBI, and that's what Republicans ultimately are asking. They said, listen, if you have problems with this informant, why was he on the payroll so long?
So you see what they're doing. They're like, well, listen, if what they say is true, I mean, why was the guy ever a confidential human source to begin with? Because Alexander Smirnov was indeed that. Well, it's entirely possible that once upon a time, he was a reliable confidential human source who built up a degree of trust with the FBI. And then he stopped being that because he had a political bias against Joe Biden, because he'd been co-opted by Russian intelligence. Simply because you're trustworthy at one point in time doesn't mean that by definition you're inherently trustworthy in perpetuity, right? They seem to not understand how honesty and lies work, which is ironic given that they are the foremost peddlers of lies in American media. But beyond that, Of course, the FBI has evidence. That's why that they were able to make the arrest in the first place. They have to have evidence in order to do that, in order to indict him, right? You actually have to be able to produce evidence. Now, it's not a conviction, so it's entirely possible that once the trial takes place, Smirnov will be able to become acquitted, right? But of course, the FBI has evidence. That's why this entire thing occurred in the first place. But now let's get to the main event, okay? My favorite part. As you know, I love Jessica Tarlov. I am an unabashed Jessica Tarlov simp. I have enormous respect for skilled debaters like her who are able to go into the lion's den. And she's not on the five in this situation, right? She's usually up against Jesse Waters, Jeanine Pirro, Dana Perino, Greg Gutfeld. She's actually up against straight news elements of the Fox Propaganda Network, John Roberts, and then his two guests here. But once again, she finds herself outnumbered. They have to try to gang up on her in order to stand even the slightest chance, but they are simply no match. I want to play these three clips, and we'll unpack them together.
Joe Biden has never had any involvement or any direct or indirect financial interest in those activities. None. Do you take that at face value, Jessica?
Yeah. You shouldn't go before a committee and tell lies, and I don't expect that James Biden is doing that. I don't know why Jim Comer and Jim Jordan thought that perhaps it was going to be Joe Biden's brother that brought him down. But this is the path that they've chosen to take. And honestly, I'm surprised that they have this high of a threshold for humiliation. Every witness that they have called has decimated their arguments, from Devin Archer to Peter Schwerin to Marvin Young. And then we have the guy behind the Holy Grail document, the 1023, Alexander Smirnov, who's found that he had lied, right, about the charges, the $5 million that went to both of them. And then it gets even better. Not only did he lie, he was lying because the Russians were feeding him the disinformation. It's so embarrassing. I think Jamie Raskin was spot on when he said that this impeachment inquiry really ended yesterday when we found out that we have a Russian asset that was foundational to this impeachment inquiry. And Jim Comer and Jim Jordan should maybe try doing something for their constituents and let this go, because it's going nowhere.
Okay,
Love it, okay? They're referring to, of course, James Biden, President Biden's brother, who is actually testifying in a closed-door hearing before the House Oversight Committee hearing. He has said that Joe Biden, his brother, has had nothing to do with his business, that there was always a wall separating them, and anyone who says otherwise is a liar. So that refers to the first part of it. Now, again, with all that in mind, the Fox anchors feel like they have to push back.
push back on that a little bit, Jessica, with Sean here, because, you know, whether this is legal or not, we don't know yet, of course. That's what the Oversight Committee is trying to get to, Sean. But even though James Biden is saying that.
So she feels the need to push back. Again, just 3-on-1 here, okay? Now, I want to play another clip as well. This is the second, I believe, of the three. I want to make sure I have them in order. All right. This is when they, this is their attempt at a gotcha.
Jessica, just to push back a little bit on what you said, you said that everybody who's testified before the committee has said Joe Biden didn't have any involvement in this. Tony Bobulinski testified before the committee and said the only reason any of these international business transactions took place, with tens of millions of dollars flowing directly to the Biden family, was because Joe Biden was in high office. The Biden family business was Joe Biden, period. What do you say?
Well, I say that the Senate themselves, including Senate Republicans, have not found Tony Bobulinski to be credible. So he gives a great cable news interview. I understand it's very compelling for people who want to believe that Joe Biden is actually a Gotti, a mob boss. But he doesn't have a ton of credibility. The people who do have credibility, like Devin Archer, for instance, have completely blown a hole through that argument. He's talked about the phone calls. He's talked about the money. Peter Schwerin handled the books. And if you want to talk about loans, we'll see if there was documentation. I don't know a lot of family members who say, I'll lend you some money. We got to get a good interest rate on this, make sure that I'm paid back in time. And he did pay him back almost immediately also. It's like we're going to hear about Hunter Biden's loan for a car that he paid back. What we're really coming down to is that we're going to be discussing the difference between blowing lines of cocaine or sawdust. This is a waste of the American people's time and our dollars to be doing this, and Republicans will be punished for it.
Jessica, rich brothers don't borrow money from poor brothers, right? Jim Biden's rich, Joe Biden.
So again, see how they have to gang up on her. So first it was the one in the middle, then it was John Roberts, then the guy at the end there. They have to make it a 3-on-1 because they're even still no match for her 3-on-1. But again, what I love about it there at the end is they're like, well, listen, you know, James Biden is rich. Why would he have to borrow money from Joe Biden, who's poor? Joe Biden wasn't poor. At the time that Joe Biden loaned his brother money, and by the way, he did so as a civilian to civilian. He wasn't vice president. He wasn't president. Joe Biden was already a multimillionaire because of speaking gigs, book deals, things like that. We already know because we have his tax forms because he, unlike Donald Trump, turned over all of his relevant tax information. Joe Biden was a multimillionaire for legitimate reasons. So that is why James Biden borrowed money from Joe Biden. And we do have the bank records to prove that the loans were paid back. So this guy is nothing. The Tony Bobulinski thing, we talked about that in a previous video. He produced a lot of claims, but no evidence. And when challenged, okay, do you have concrete evidence? Can you prove these claims? He always comes up short. Last clip here. Again, this is just goes to show you that even in the straight news part of Fox, they are in the bag for Donald Trump and they despise Joe Biden and the Democrats. They are dying metaphorically on the dumbest of hills. See for yourself.
Used to further investigate off of information that Tony Bobulinski gave him. This whole thing reeks, and I hope that we get all the information. If Joe Biden's clean, as an American, I want to know that. But I do think we have to do a deep dive into what's happening here inside the Biden administration.
Yeah, and Sean, this did not all center around Smirnov's testimony. I just want to make that point as well.
No, but
Sean,
it was
Jessica,
foundational.
We gotta go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Again, I love it, guys. So they try to give him the last word, but Jessica Tarlov's like, no, I'm not. No, it was foundational. So you see what they tried to do? Try to give him the last word. And then because they know that's not enough, then she had to speak up in his defense, too. So it was like a double layer. Clearly, this news organization has absolutely no credibility whatsoever. I'm surprised they haven't fired Tarlov yet because she's so good at making them look like absolute idiots. We know Fox viewers hate her because she is not a MAGA cultist, but it's just so funny to see this. She is absolutely infinitely more intelligent, better versed on the facts, a superb debater, better than all of them. And I love the fact that they are bending over backwards to try to resuscitate this absolute dead letter of a witch hunt. Let me know what you think in the comments.